lots of people are getting divorced. We know that it's about the same everywhere, or it's been the same throughout the centuries, right? It really has not changed. And how can we be set apart as to our marriage and having it represent God? Because God said marriage is to glorify Him. So why aren't people doing it?
Selfishness.
Because they think it's all about them?
Well, that's the gist of it. I think that people want their marriage to be centered around themselves, and they can't see the bigger picture about what truly marriage is about. Not only does it glorify God, but it changes us to be more like Jesus. And so marriage, because you have two people who are imperfect and two people who are selfish, it's going to cause drama. I mean, it is a perfect recipe for drama.
Yeah. So how do we get over it?
Well, to understand the meaning of marriage, that it's not just because God wants us to be happy, not because God wants us to have kids, but God wants to change us. There's no other relationship that I can think of, or that the Bible even talks about, that's a higher relationship than a marital relationship. It is at the high point of the enemy, our enemy Satan. He hates marriages because he knows that it is God's highest relationship that He's established.
And a way to get over this too, in order to be set apart, you have to have your own personal relationship with God. You cannot expect your spouse to be your faith. You cannot expect your spouse to ultimately be what you want them to be if you are not seeking God yourself.
Yeah, I think too there's always a bigger story that's happening than ourselves. I think, like you said, we make it about us. Each person makes it about themselves. I'm not happy. I'm not getting the attention I deserve. I'm just sick and tired of this and that, or whatever else. When I think of marriage, I think of a bigger picture. I think of God's story, and He's allowing me to be in it. And so I want to play my part to not only bring God glory, but for God to change me the way He wants to. And so I have to deal with the frustrations of marriage when I'm not getting my way and things aren't going the way that I want them to. I'm believing that God's going to change me and a better result is coming, but I have to surrender to God's will, and I have to know God's word in order to operate the way God is telling me to operate. And so He's telling me to seek first His kingdom and His righteousness above everything else. He's telling me when I submit myself to Him that He's promising me blessings and a good result. I have to go through the fire of marriage, to the setbacks, to the disappointments, to the missed out expectations of what I thought marriage was going to be about for a greater result later. But most people don't want to take the time to figure that out. All they know is, I'm not happy, I haven't been happy in a long time, this person makes me upset, they never do what I need them to do, they don't give me what I want, and it's always about me. And so what they do is they get out of that relationship, then they find someone else who they think is going to fulfill those desires that they have, and they go through it again, and then they find themselves in a similar situation, the same thing. And so I just think we have a misconception of what marriage is supposed to be about. I believe that we have a misconception of what marriage is all about, and because of that misconception, we're always going to be putting ourselves in a position to where the person that we're with are going to fall short of what we thought marriage is going to be about. And so it's set up for disaster with the mindset of what most people have when it comes to being married.
Because you have to look at marriage as like a triangle. That God is at the head, and then you and your spouse is in the both of the corners, right? So it's like you cannot do it without allowing God to come into your marriage, without inviting Him in, because we all have our own needs, we all have our own wants, but the Bible never tells us that our spouse is to meet every need. The Bible actually says God is to meet that need. So when you are not feeling loved, when you are feeling disrespected, how can you go to God in your pain and your hurt and cry out to Him and ask Him to show Him who He is? Because ultimately, that is where your trust needs to be.
Yeah, and most people who get married, you know, the world says, I met my soulmate, you complete me. All these different ideas about it, but that was never God's intention. God's intention was for Himself to complete us. And so when we go into a marriage expecting the other person to complete us, we're already setting ourselves up for disaster.
So, in order to put God first in your marriage, remember your priority. It's always going to be God first, family second, career third, because without God, you cannot do anything. But with God, all things are possible. Hope this encourages you. God bless.